Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Phil Berg, deserving of everybody's support. Go to ObamaCrimes.com. Give him a contribution. This is the leading front. You can see this Orly Taitz, completely incompetent, flailing and indeed veering into these areas of malpractice. Therefore, stick with Berg, and that's ObamaCrimes.com. Don't get demoralized. The failures of the Orly Taitz cases have nothing to do with the merits, but simply the ineptitude and the bungling of Orly Taitz. Now, let's look at the Polish missile crisis, right? The big news this past week is that Obama has decided not to install the Bush version of a missile shield in Poland. That was going to be 10 interceptors in silos in northern Poland, backed up by a radar in the Czech Republic and other sensors. The other sensors would have reached rather deep into the Baltic states, according to quite a few reports. Now, Obama says he's not going to do that. He is going to call that off, and he's going to go with the Aegis missile system later on. Now, this is precisely what we have been predicting over the past 18 months. Remember, the goal of Obama is that the United States steps back from direct confrontation with enemies, but rather employs puppet states and indirect means to try to play one enemy state against the other, the classical essence of imperialism, the so-called buck passing, right? Play Russia against China, play Iran against China, play Iran against Russia, play African states against China, and so forth. Play India against Russia and China, if possible. This is the new look. Now, therefore, play Georgia against Russia. That's another version of this. The problem is when you're dealing with something as small as Georgia, it's pretty clear who's behind it. So the U.S. is now crawling all over Georgia. This is not a good thing. But the novelty now is that instead of having a limited number, so-called 10 missiles, and nobody knows what kind of missiles they would be, those could be first strike missiles. There's no inspection of those missiles, so those could be pointed directly at Moscow. The Russian objection was that these so-called anti-missile missiles, ABM missiles or missile shield operations, this was a thinly disguised version of a first strike strategy, meaning the U.S. would pull a surprise sneak attack on Russia, and then the Russian retaliatory second strike would be suppressed with the help of these 10 missiles. And, of course, who's going to guarantee that they were 10? The new version now depends on the Aegis cruisers and Aegis destroyers of the Navy. And instead of being 10, it's going to be dozens, and it might get up to hundreds. These would be, since the cover story offered by the U.S. is that it's directed against Iran. It's Iran. Now, they say, the Iranian ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, are not going forward on the fast track. The Iranians are going more into short-range ballistic missiles, medium-range ballistic missiles, maybe even intermediate-range ballistic missiles. So therefore, you've got to defend against that. You can look at the 1,200-mile range of the Iranian Sajil-2 missile, S-A-J-I-L. The Sajil-2 with a 1,200-mile range can reach into Ukraine, into Moldova, into Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, into India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, Kazakhstan, and deep into Russia, almost to Moscow. All of southern Russia is in the range of this missile. So they say, no, we're not going to put these things into Poland. We're going to put Aegis cruisers in the eastern Mediterranean. Who knows if they won't put them in the Black Sea, because that would make sense too. Caspian Sea you can't get to, at least under any known system. But these are waterborne vectors for these anti-missile missiles. It's going to be the Standard Missile Mark III, short-range interceptor missiles. It looks like the Poles get a Patriot missile battalion as a short-term consolation prize. Now, the problem with this is the following. The numbers are completely open-ended. So it's not just 10, it's gone to dozens. So it's far more. They don't seem to involve Russia directly at this point. But here's the idea. The current deployment, the thing that Obama has announced, is Aegis missiles on cruisers, destroyers, and other ships that will be complete by 2011. But then there's going to be a second generation of Aegis-led, Aegis-directed anti-missile missiles deployed by 2015, and then a third generation by 2018. And those could be extremely capable. Those could, and are intended to be, quite frankly, designed to protect both Europe and the United States against short-range, intermediate-range, IRBMs, already quite robust, and eventually against intercontinental ballistic missiles by 2018. So that's the third phase. Now, the principal Russian objection is voiced by Major General Vladimir Dvorkin. He is the head, the distinguished Russian military man, former chief of the Research Institute of the Red Army for Nuclear Strategy. He says that the reconfigured U.S. system could still be directed against Russia, and I quote Major General Vladimir Dvorkin, who says, quote, "Everything depends on the scale of such a system," he says to Interfax. "If it comprises a multitude of facilities, including a space echelon, it may threaten the Russian potential for nuclear deterrence." Now, other than that, the Russian response is positive. Medvedev says this creates good conditions for working with the United States. Medvedev takes note of Obama's responsible attitude. We will have to conduct substantial expert consultations on this, and we will do so. We will work together to develop effective measures against the risk of missile proliferation, measures that take into account the interests and concerns of all sides and include equal security for all countries in Europe. Now, today, Putin also says that this is a brave measure by Obama, but Putin also says, now, why don't you drop your economic warfare measures, which include the so-called COCOM list, in other words, the effective prolongation of the technically defunct but actually quite robust, quite live COCOM list, which means that high-tech equipment cannot be exported, or it's almost impossible, prohibitively difficult to get high-tech equipment, modern computers, things like this, exported into Russia. So Putin says, drop that. The idea is this is appeasement, but why? The goal, of course, is to turn Russia against Iran, as we will show you in the next segment.